I'm looking for Jack Rangel. Any of you seen him?
Well, that'd be me. Let's take this outside so these nice folks can continue their drinking.
Now, let's have a good clean duel. 1, 2, 3, 4. Draw.
Must have been here for that bounty on me. Oh well, I need another drink. Let's go back inside.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a very wild western Rimworld, where we join our series protagonist as he lies in a pool of his own vomit, right after his night of drinking, dancing, and whatever else cowboys get up to in the bar after dark. I imagine it was something like the scene of Arthur and Lenny getting drunk in Red Dead Redemption 2, if you've played that game. But regardless of how you viewers decide to imagine his previous night of partying, it's clear he had a pretty good time, followed by a not so good morning. But while we wait for our friend Jack here to wake up and get his stuff together, we will introduce him. Good old Jack here is a lifelong bounty hunter, once being renowned on this planet as one of the greatest, although he's aged, and many have said he's gotten a little bit soft in his older age. Still, based on that shooting skill, I imagine he's an ace whenever he's handed a gun, and he's also a pretty good cook, probably from the many nights of roasting meat or maybe some marshmallows on the campfire while out on his bounty hunts. He's also got some good skills in medical and animals, which makes sense for a cowboy who's constantly with his horse and who would have to patch himself up on long bounty missions. To summarize, he's a cowboy through and through, with the iron will to back it up. And let me tell you, dear viewers, an iron will is needed here in the West. The sun beats down on you, bullets fly in all directions, the wildlife is harsh. I mean, come on, there's a dead man laying in the street still. You know what, Jack? I would probably be vomiting too if I saw the slowly rotting corpse of a man I'd killed in the street. Hey, hang on, you're used to this sort of thing. Oh, right, he's probably vomiting from the alcohol. Well, better out than in, as they say. And speaking of stuff that is heading out, Jack and his trusty steed Buckshot are on the move, heading on out of town. Yes, as they set out on their adventure, I hear you ask, where are they going? How did our hero end up in this town? And why is there a bounty on him? These are all excellent questions that I assure you, those of you in the audience that are interested in the very story-heavy side of my videos will be answered in good time. For now though, Jack will remain a mysterious lone cowboy, a cowboy who has spent his last dollars on some good liquor, and one who may need some money to pay off that bounty on him. So as we head back out to the world map, Jack would begin shuffling through the bounty flyers he collected the night before things got blurry, that is. Eventually finding this job, posted by Outpost Jeb, for one Acacius Quincaius. That name took me a couple of tries to get right, I am not afraid to admit it. And this guy is wanted for cybercrimes. Now, you might also be thinking, cybercrimes? In the West, there's no technology like that in Western times, Templar. You'd be right, but you've got to remember that this is a Western Rimworld. While we watch Jack traverse the landscape after turning back around towards the bounty outpost, I will explain a little something about this Rimworld. You see, we have a particular faction included in the game, known as the Rangers, who are essentially a futuristic Western faction from a fantastic mod by modder Chicken Plucker. Normally the Rangers are a peaceful and helpful faction, but on this planet they are our technocratic overlords, who hoard the world's technology. When this once great mining planet was abandoned by the spacefaring civilizations that were gathering resources from it. But I don't want to over-explain the story too much this early on, and I don't want to spoil anything. And for those of you who are here for a genuine Western experience without all of the high tech, please don't click off just yet. I want to try to keep the first few episodes at least to be very strictly Western. No crazy laser guns, just good old-fashioned duels, hoedowns, and liquor, baby. And in the time I've spent yapping, it appears Jack has arrived at our target site, spotting a pair of log cabins off in the distance. No doubt our good hacker friend is hiding out here. Looks like he's patrolling the perimeter and wearing some sort of primitive garb, most likely to trick us into thinking he's some sort of low-tech tribesperson not capable of such crimes. Little does he know, his days of freedom are about to come to an end, and that disguise is not fooling us. Jack would find a nearby hitching post, roping Buckshot up, keeping his travelling companion nice and safe, far away from any gunfire that may end up startling him. Jack would then take his positions, watching out for our bounty friend. Seeing no danger, he'd proceed, trying to get a better look, staying quiet. Then, we spotted him. Jack would square up behind some rocks, but as quickly as our bounty began to rush us, Jack had already put a bullet between his eyes. And just as we thought it was safe to grab the body, a second person came out of the main building, brandishing a rifle. Jack, leaping into action, unsure of this woman's intent here, would follow her between the buildings. But unfortunately, she would manage to hit him with a really solid shot from her rolling block rifle. Retreating into cover, we would watch her run through the tall, dry grass. Turns out, this woman was our bounty's lover, and it looks like we've interrupted their lover's retreat. I also suspect we haven't seen the last of her. This is the West. She's probably going to be out for revenge. I can almost guarantee it. But cutting back to Jack, we can see that he's begun patching himself up. He may have taken a couple of nasty shots from that rifle, but luckily he's still good enough to check out the rest of the camp. There wasn't much in this little storage shed on the outskirts, nor was there anything too interesting in the bedroom that the lovers had been staying in, but we would, out in the dining room, find a masterwork mastodon leather bearskin. In finding this, I should mention that we are playing with the better camp loot mod, and since this mod is actually prone to giving you some really OP gear in the loot table, I won't be taking everything from each bounty camp that we come across, and that goes firstly for this bearskin. Anyway, moving on from this very strange article of clothing, we can see that night has begun to fall here in the camp, which gives me an opportunity, as Jack drags the bounty's body off to load him onto Buckshot, for me to mention that we're playing with the realistic darkness mod, which I think just looks super cool with all of the chem lamps and campfires that we'll have throughout the series. That being said, please do let me know if the video is a bit too dark in the comments section. I'll do some pretty basic color correction, but if it's still bothering people and it's too dark, please let me know, I'll keep playing around with it. Moving on, Jack was very relieved finding this very comfortable bed after his first bounty hunt that he's completed in several years. These soft sheets were very easy on his old muscles as he drifts off into a very peaceful sleep. The following morning, we'd pound down some pemmican before heading out to unhitch Buckshot and ride right on out of here, back off into the big wide world. It took us about a day to travel down the dirt road to come back up to the outpost of Jeb's settlement, where we were able to turn in our first bounty, for a very handsome reward of 916 silver, that is. The rough inhabitants of the outpost Jeb town that we'd visited also thanked us kindly for our service, offering to exchange some of the bounty reward for some beer, whiskey, and much needed medicine. The sheriff's office also asked for our help in bringing in a wanted murderer by the name of Britannia. Turns out she's a traveller from up north who killed a highwayman of outpost Jeb during an attempted robbery. The reward isn't anything crazy, as the settlement that's asking for help with tracking her down doesn't exactly have a massive fund. But we are happy to help regardless, and this might gain us some good standing with the outpost Jeb. Before too long, we'd travelled down south, towards an old outpost that she'd been spotted heading towards a couple days prior. We arrived late in the morning in the tropical rainforest as the rain bucketed down around us. This is probably a good time to mention this planet has some very extreme weather. especially close to the equator here, where we do get a lot of plant life and constantly very high temperatures. As Jack stopped in the forest here, he's begun to survey the log cabin, noticing there is indeed a campfire lit underneath the outdoor pergola. There is absolutely someone here. We can't be certain it's our bounty yet though. As we approached, we could see someone outside patrolling. Getting a glimpse of her, we could tell it was a girl matching Britannia's description, so we'd continue forward. As Jack moves in, I think he must have got some rain in his eyes because he whiffed all of his shots despite the very close range. Maybe he was also off-put by all the murder victims in the gibbet cages. Who knows? What we do know is that Britannia is definitely not the only one here. Deciding to pop back out with his Winchester 1873, he would get a real good snipe on Britannia, who would then also make a break for the door. Suspecting that she and her partner are now going to hide inside of the building, Jack would move towards the door, listening for movement before trying to provoke them by stabbing at the door. In a few seconds, Britannia would re-emerge, getting into close-range combat with Jack, which worked out well for us, as Jack's Bowie knife works way better than her fists do. Her companion would then begin to fire at Jack from inside the cabin, forcing us into a retreat. We would take cover behind these sandbags not too far away, and one shot was all it took from Jack to put Britannia down. Her accomplice Levin would then burst from the cabin. He would push towards us using his raging volcano pistol, spitting shot after shot at Jack, who would begin to move towards the packed rucksacks in the camp center in an attempt to find some sort of cover. But by the time he'd made it, Levin had already stopped firing and was running away from us. If nothing else, at least he left Buckshot alone on his way out, so we can be thankful for that. We're also very thankful that we got that medicine from Outpost Jeb, as Jack did take some pretty bad wounds, although he would manage to patch himself up while surveying Britannia's corpse. Jack, in his mind, would recall countless other bounties he'd brought in cold. Guess this young woman is just another body on the pile. At least this one deserved it, he would think to himself as he began to search the small cabin, finding nothing. At least this woman had taken the lives of others. This was just an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life. But as Jack stood by the campfire, lighting up one of the cigars he had found on Britannia's body, he recalled all the lives he'd ended that weren't so justified. The bounties he'd taken and been paid for, where he was the executioner. At times, for little more than existing on this planet. And yet as his cigar burns, he realizes he is truly in the same position now, with the same people paying someone to kill him. Thus is the way of this world. He's lived the life, and he'll keep living it until they put him in the ground. For now, he'd get to roping up Buckshot properly, patting his friend as he led him to the hitching post. He'd then grab a bite to eat, scooping up one of the simple meals that Britannia was planning on eating for dinner. He could have also used this lovely table inside as well. Not sure why he decided to stand outside eating next to the corpse, but okay. Now, as night begins to fall again, having travelled far, our hero would lay down to rest by the campfire, still pondering on his situation. Perhaps this is always how it was supposed to end. But in the cowboy way, he won't go down without a blaze of glory. This wouldn't be the worst place to go either. The forest is so peaceful at night, and Jack was glad to be sleeping outside. Rough living's not too bad for a cowboy, and he's got a nice warm campfire to keep him company. Jack awoke at 4 AM, knowing he had a long day ahead of him. He'd packed Britannia's now cold body onto Buckshot, preparing for his journey before grabbing a bottle of whiskey and taking a decent drink. He needed it after having to carry a corpse. This is also the cowboy's traditional breakfast of champions. Everything you can need in a single bottle. Now that Jack's sufficiently buzzed, he'd hit the road, spending a day and a half trekking back through the jungle before coming to the Rat Rock settlement of Outpost Jeb. There, he would turn in yet another bounty and find something worthy of the money that he'd make from the warrant. That being a slave, or to be more specific, a slave that we're going to recruit over time, hopefully. A man by the name of Rubik. He's originally from the Augusta Coalition, which is the main Outlander faction in the planet South. How he became a slave, I have no idea, but I can tell you he's got some good shooting skills, which is why we've decided to purchase his freedom, in the hopes that he'll join our bounty gang. I will provide some more in-depth details on Rubik once we've recruited him, and I'd love to get a name from him from you lovely people in the comments, and just some names in general for this series for different characters. During our stay in the outpost as well, we would pick up another bounty flyer. This one posted by the Blue Canyon settlement for one Alex Gondoza Boyle, whose latest sighting is not far from us now. We'll be paying her a visit very soon. It would seem our friend Gondoza here has set herself up at a small group of fishing shacks. They're most likely owned by some sort of wealthy landowner who comes here in the summer for some relaxation and fishing with his family. We'd find a hitching post just down the beach from the cluster of cabins, seeing the light in the distance. Rubik wanted to have a little sleep before going in, but Jack felt it would be better to head in under the cover of darkness, hoping to catch them sleeping. They would plan for a moment before taking a quick snack break, chowing down on some berries that they'd foraged, before they made their way down the sandy shore towards the lights. This'll be a good payment for us if we can manage to bring the Gondoza in alive. We'll need the money now that we've got 2 mouths to feed as well. Having now approached the small group of huts, we can see that there are several sets of defensive mounds, one of which we would hide behind. These have probably been set up by Gondoza to help repel bounty hunters coming for her, although we're going to be using it against her, as she spotted us from the central road. We would exchange fire, having Rubik move a little closer for some better aim at Gondoza, as her blue-haired freak companion would appear and search for cover herself. The defensive mound really worked wonders, as we didn't take a single shot, and before we knew it, Gondoza is dead on the ground, which is still alright. We'll still get some dollars off of this. And Bluey, well, she's off on the run. To celebrate another job well done, we'd grab some chow and a smoke as we let the adrenaline begin to subside. We can now admire the beauty of this little place without having to worry about being shot at. It really is a pity that we had to stain the grounds with blood. And we're hoping that the owner of these shacks won't get too upset with us for having left such a mess here, or for the fact that Rubik has used one of their very comfy beds for the evening to get a good night's rest, while Jack has again decided to take some time to reflect on his path in life. With Rubik now joining him, he's resolved to start putting together a team that can assist him in paying off his bounty, if his pursuers will even accept the payment, that is. As he sat on the dock, under the light of the 1 chem lamp burning, with the sound of the water moving peacefully across the lake, he would pull out the flyer Gilman had given him at the bar the evening before we first met our hero. 100,000 silver, he thought to himself. Rarely had he ever seen such a bounty. Thankfully, these sorts of jobs were not public knowledge. Only Ranger-approved bounty hunters and crooks would be offered targets like this, so he won't be flooded by amateur bounty hunters looking to make a name for themselves. He's got a lot of work to do, and decisions to make, but this was all worth it. He made a choice that day, when he failed his bounty. For once in his life, he also knew it was the right choice. He would relive the moments of that day as he drifts off to sleep. Although, for now, those events that have led us to this place will remain a mystery to us. But with time, we will learn more about Jack's past. The next morning, Rubik would get up early to haul the Gondoza's dead body all the way back up the beach, throwing her onto Buckshot's back, before heading back to the cabins for some breakfast. As he walks back though, it appears an enemy has arrived. A man by the name of Manju, part of the Stoneface bandit gang. He may possibly be looking for Gondoza, for some sort of nefarious criminal activities. All the while, our people, unaware of the impending threat, were trying to get some wood together to start a campfire and cook up some food for the upcoming 4 to 5 day trip up to the Blue Canyon settlements. We were unaware that our adversary was also making his way down the beach towards us. This is until Jack caught a glimpse of him, hurrying to the closest cover, calling Rubik for assistance. A good old-fashioned shootout would ensue, where Jack and Manju traded shots from a distance. Rubik would move up behind some large stones, getting closer as his gun didn't quite have the range that Jack's did. We were eager to finish off our foe, as one poorly placed shot could hit buckshot, and Jack loves that horse, so Rubik was being insanely careful. And his careful shooting would pay off, just as Jack had decided to end up charging him with his bowie knife. He didn't quite make it by the time Manju was already on the ground, lifeless. The rest of the day would go by pretty quick. We'd go bison hunting, and in the evening Jack would cook up the spoils of our hunt on the campfire, before our companions enjoyed some bison broth soup under the warm light of the chem lamps. That is, before Jack would retreat to his cabin for the night. But he's not gone inside to sleep. No, not quite yet. He's decided to do some crafting. Now, his crafting skill is only at a 3, so don't expect anything too fancy from him. And fancy is not what we got here. It is an awful quality tribal poncho. And you may be thinking to yourself, as we see Rubik wearing this, that this is a pretty useless piece of clothing. But I'll have you know that this still gives an additional 7 degrees of heat insulation, even at awful quality, which makes a huge difference. As this part of the world often gets to over 40 degrees Celsius during the daytime, meaning that heat insulation is really important, which is why we've given it to Rubik, who was actually beginning to get some heat strokes. But now that we've got enough food and appropriate clothing, we'd pack up and head off before the sun goes down, hitting the road again for a grueling 4-day journey, all the way from the lands of Outpost Jeb to the Blue Canyon settlements. When we would arrive at the Blue Canyon settlements, we would forget all about that very long journey though, as the silver hit our pockets, finishing the bounty, turning it in for our reward. We would then do a little bit of trading with our newfound silver, getting some more medicine, some vegetable stew, and a new combat knife for Rubik, which would also help in lifting our spirits. Spirits. Yes, we also got some of those, as we grabbed a few bottles of the finest double-aged whiskey that this settlement had to offer. And now that while I've been yapping, you will have also seen that we're back on the road. That is because we're heading out to a small abandoned mine that we saw while we were traveling. We figured we'd come back around to check it out, especially since we didn't find any more decent bounties that we wanted to take at the moment. It doesn't look like much on the outside, most likely just a small mining outpost, which has mostly been excavated already, and indeed that seems to be the case, as Jack would enter and begin searching the rooms. The sight of large pools of dried blood did off-put us though, but the gold we'd find in the vault room would perk old Jack right back up. Let's see what else this place has to offer. Well, look at this, there's more gold, and some insects. Jack thought that these bugs were actually after him, but thankfully they weren't hostile. Yet. Yeah, we would begin to blast them, causing them to begin chasing us out, where they would meet Rubik's hunting knife, which upon its first test we can confirm is pretty sharp and good at stabbing insects. Once these two big boy centipedes, scolopedes, whatever they're meant to be called, once the big annoying bug things were dead, we decided that we weren't going to take any chances with this little locust fella that we would find inside, so we went in and shanked him too. After Jack had patched Rubik up real quick from his injuries, we would check out the mining room. Although since both of our characters have absolutely atrocious mining skill, the only thing that we had decided to bother grabbing was this very high-tech drill device, which our characters have never seen before. We figured it could be worth something. With our large drill strapped to Buckshot's back, though, we were back off, heading up the coast to a little spot Jack used to camp out at between bounties. This beautiful little cove is the perfect spot to set down some roots. That's right, we've decided to put down a proper semi-permanent base. This will be a good spot for us to come and keep a steady supply of food, heal from our injuries, and store all of our loot. We couldn't have picked a more beautiful place either. Jack would pound down a beer to celebrate, thinking of all the silver he will make here. Hopefully that bounty will be gone in no time. But there will be no way for us to pay the bounty off if we don't survive. And to survive, we'll need shelter. which we're thinking we can set up in this sandy circle in the middle of our vegetation, to begin with at least. Both our boys would get hard to work chopping down trees so we can gather some wood to build all of our shelter out of, clearing out the vegetation in this area. This will also help out with our line of sight in case enemies try to lurk on the beaches on either side of the cove. We'll be able to spot them now that all the trees are out of the way. But with night quickly falling, we would lay down some plans for 2 wooden canopies and a small campfire, rushing to move a lot of our goods towards the little setup we have. That way the waves don't pull anything out to the ocean when the tide comes in. Jack would throw up our shelter reasonably quick. You learn a thing or two after many years of roughing it as bounty hunter, and one of those things is how to throw up a quick log shelter. Our 2 acquaintances would then warm themselves by the fire as the night ocean breeze drifts in. Although Rubik's ideology forbid him from drinking, which I would go on to change after, because his people are definitely not under some sort of prohibition, I'd like to still believe that he joined Jack in with swigging down the first of our bottles of double-aged whiskey. A small celebration for the founding of our camp. They would trade stories for a little bit before they'd head off to bed. These 2 are quickly becoming friends, which is very important as we are using the Recruit Your Slaves mod to try to recruit Rubik into the faction, and that uses his opinion to calculate how likely it is for Rubik to join the camp on any given attempt. Despite that, things are really starting to look up for our hero. But remember, this is the West. Trouble is always lurking around the corner, and problems roll in with the tumbleweeds. As morning came, we'd set out to work on this place, first deciding to establish a proper food source by getting to planting a couple fields of crops. One giving us some corn, the other some potatoes. You really need a balanced diet as a bounty hunter. You've got to keep those energy levels up. Jack, sweaty from all his work, then decided he wanted to cool off by taking a dip in one of the isolated pools around our island. It's nice to finally be off the road where we can have time to refresh and relax like Jack did here. Something that was quite relaxing for me to hear as well is that the time that it will take for Rubik to join us is going to be much less than I had initially thought. As these 2 were sitting around the campfire, I realized that they're actually already pretty good friends. They're definitely not just acquaintances. It seems Rubik is really warming to the bounty hunter lifestyle. And as they convened around the campfire this evening, he would mention to Jack that he wants to help him out by helping to pay off his bounty, just like how Jack could help release him from slavery. That all being said, we've got to get back to work. So the next day, we decided to actually put up our first building, that being a storage hut, where we can keep all of our supplies and any valuable items that we find on our journey. So Jack would get to work constructing a small log storehouse on the beach here, while Rubik continues cutting down trees. We wouldn't make too much progress on this on the first night, but at least the logs are laid down for the construction to begin tomorrow. Very early in the morning, it would seem some Blue Canyon settlers have arrived to welcome us to our new home. And as the morning sun rose, Jack would go up to have a chat with them, deciding to make some trades to build relations. We would give up all of the gold that we'd acquired from the mine we scavenged in exchange for some pemmican to fill our tummies, while our crops grow, that is. But more importantly, we would purchase this beautiful white stallion, which Rubik will take ownership of. The settlers also let us know that the outpost Jeb Prime Victor, which is their faction leader, had radioed them in letting them know that a friend of his had been lost while she was exploring in our region. We decided this would be a good chance to help someone out who may decide to stick around here. Even if it is only while she gets better, she might be able to help out around the camp for a bit. That evening, as Jack dreamed inside his log cabin, he'll begin to formulate a name for our settlement as well. But he couldn't quite put his finger on what he wanted to call it, so I think you guys in the comments are going to have to give us a name for it. It's probably going to be better than whatever I would come up with anyway. It's now been nearly 2 weeks since Jack had purchased Rubik, and I noticed, as I said a little while ago, that they are becoming pretty good friends. But now it's time for Jack to officially ask him to join the bounty gang, as Yilmaz, which I didn't realize was his first name, was eating breakfast. These two are now united as a duo, deciding to make haste in rescuing the potentially wounded, helpless woman that the outpost Jeb are aware of. Unlashing our steeds, Jack and Buckshot, and Rubik and his unnamed white stallion would ride together as a powerful, rugged pair, ready for whatever this dust bowl has to throw at us. The journey, as you'd expect, took the entire day, riding for about 12 hours, from about 8 AM to 8 PM. So it was in the darkness of night that we arrived, riding in towards Rose, who was indeed bruised on the ground in the desert sands. We couldn't see anybody that might have hurt her. As Jack and Rubik arrived, Jack would jump off at Buckshot, offering our poor wounded friend some help. She would let us know that we need to be careful though, as there is indeed a man around here who had beaten her. Rubik would be the lookout as Jack provided first aid to Rose, who was thankfully just bruised, not bleeding. Although it seems our adversary has taken a path where Rubik couldn't spot him, and is indeed here to attack us. He would shoot at Jack, hitting him as we began to scramble for cover, running over to the nearby rocky outcropping. Jumping quickly into defensive positions after we had secured Rose's safety, we would wait for our enemy to emerge, on high alert. Then he began to advance. This was a huge mistake on his part, as it only took a single shot from both of our cowboys to end his miserable life. As he continues to bleed from the chest, his body will rot here, after his pitiful death, alone in the desert sands. As for us though, we are back on out of here, scooping up Rose, carrying her over to Buckshot, who will ferry both her and Jack back home. And with this successful rescue mission, we are going to close out our episode for today, as our team begins to journey back on home. I think it's been a really eventful episode. We've gone from 1 to 3 people already. There's so much backstory that I want to get into with this series. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the story unfolds. This one, unlike my previous series, the medieval series, doesn't really have a set ending that I want. There's a lot of different potential endings that it could have, a lot of different ways that it's going to go. Obviously, my stories are a bit more curated than sort of the randomness of Rimworld. That being said, there are some potential endings, but there's nothing set in stone. I also want to mention real quickly, the mod pack is in the video description. There will also be some configs, a scenario, and a starting save if you want to play along with me. If there is a big outcrying for sort of how you can set this up and play along, I could do some sort of small video where I show people how to set up the world and sort of configure everything to your liking. But if you want that, leave it in the comment section down below. I'm sure I could organize something before the next episode. Anyway, with that, I will see you all in the next episode. I hope you're enjoying. I'm excited to get into this one a bit more. I'll see you then. Goodbye.